Everyone laughed at the wheelchair-bound kid in the interview, but the millionaire stood up, moved. Jason Mitchell adjusted his tie for the 10th time as he waited in the reception area of the largest tech company in New York City. At 23, he carried an exceptional resume and a determination that overcame any obstacle, but he knew many could only see his wheelchair. When the meeting room door opened, Jason heard muffled laughter from inside. The receptionist, Jenny, looked at him with obvious discomfort. "Sorry for the delay, Jason. Mr. Peterson is just finishing up a meeting," she said, avoiding his gaze. Jason nodded politely, but through the slightly ajar door, he caught fragments of the conversation inside. "Seriously, we have to interview this guy," a man's voice echoed. "Couldn't HR have screened better?" "It's protocol, Peterson. But relax, it'll be quick. We'll pretend to consider him and then come up with some technical excuse," another replied. The laughter that followed made Jason's stomach tighten. He'd faced prejudice before, but never so blatantly. Across the hall, Richard Blackwell, the founder and president of Blackwell Technologies, was walking toward the elevator when he noticed the young man in reception. Something about the young man's determined posture caught his eye. Richard had built his company from the ground up and had a sharp eye for spotting real potential. "Jenny, who's the young man over there?" he asked discreetly. "He's a candidate for the senior analyst position, Mr. Blackwell. He has an interview with Mr. Peterson now." Richard watched for a few more seconds. There was something uncomfortably familiar about the scene. The door swung open fully, and Stephen Peterson, the HR director, appeared with a forced smile. "Jason Mitchell, please come in." Jason maneuvered his chair with precision, entering the room where 3 executives waited. Peterson sat at the head of the oval table, flanked by Amanda Johnson, the project manager, and Mark Williams, the technical lead. "Have a seat. Peterson stammered, drawing stifled laughs from the other 2. "Thank you, I'm already seated," Jason replied with a genuine smile, determined not to let it shake him. Amanda flipped through his resume skeptically. "I see you graduated from MIT with honors. Impressive. But tell me, how do you plan to keep up with our company's fast pace? Our projects require a lot of mobility." The question was loaded with insinuation. Jason kept his composure. "I can explain my experience with the projects I developed during my studies. I created 3 apps still used by the university for academic management." "University apps?" Mark scoffed. "Here, we deal with complex systems worth millions. Not quite the same thing." Jason took a deep breath. He'd rehearsed for moments like this. "I understand your concern. That's why I brought a live demo of a system I've developed over the last 6 months. If you'll give me a few minutes..." "Look, Jason," Peterson cut in, "I'll be straight with you. We appreciate your resume, but our team needs people who can travel, attend external events, present projects in diverse environments. You understand our position, right?" At that moment, Richard passed by the hallway again and paused when he heard the tone of the conversation. He decided to linger near the slightly open door. "Mr. Peterson, I've traveled to academic conferences in 5 different states. I've presented to auditoriums with over 1,000 people. Accessibility isn't an obstacle when there's proper planning," Jason explained patiently. Amanda and Mark exchanged impatient glances. "But Jason, be realistic," Amanda said condescendingly. "Our clients are very traditional. They might feel uncomfortable, you know how it is." Jason felt the familiar sting of frustration, but years of experience had taught him to channel that feeling productively. "Mrs. Johnson, I respect your concern, but results speak louder than appearances. May I show you my portfolio?" Mark sighed theatrically. "Fine, you have 5 minutes. But I'll warn you now, the position requires constant presentations. How will you get on a stage, for example?" "The same way I climb stairs when needed," Jason replied, opening his laptop, "with determination and creativity." Dear listener, if you're enjoying the story, don't forget to like and especially subscribe to the channel. It really helps us who are just starting out. Now, continuing. As Jason prepared his demo, Richard watched through the crack in the door. His HR team's behavior was making him increasingly uncomfortable. He thought of Michael, his son, who had passed away 3 years earlier after facing similar discrimination at multiple companies following a car accident that left him paraplegic. Jason began his presentation, showcasing a management system he had developed independently. This software optimizes logistics processes using AI algorithms. I managed to reduce operational costs by 30% at the company where I interned. Stephen glanced at the screen with feigned disinterest, but Richard, still hidden, noticed the system was genuinely impressive. Very nice, Jason, but these are academic projects. The business world is quite different, Stephen said, abruptly closing the laptop. Actually, Mr. Peterson, this system was implemented at Harbour Logistics. I can provide references if you'd like to verify. An awkward silence filled the room. Richard knew Harbour Logistics. It was one of the largest companies in the sector in the country. Amanda stood up and accidentally bumped the table, knocking a glass of water onto Jason's laptop. "Oh, I'm so sorry. How clumsy of me," she exclaimed with fake concern. Jason immediately moved the device away from the water, checking for damage. "Don't worry, it happens," he said, drying it with a cloth. "Well, I suppose our conversation is hindered without your materials," Stephen said, clearly pleased with the accident. "I can continue without the laptop, Mr. Peterson. I've memorized all the data from my projects." Mark laughed openly. "Memorized? How convenient. How are we supposed to verify that?" Richard could no longer stay silent. He pushed the door open and entered the room, startling everyone. "Mr. Blackwell." Stephen stood quickly. "We didn't know you were here." "I was passing by and heard voices. How's the interview going?" Richard asked, his eyes fixed on Jason. "Very well, sir. The candidate is interesting," Stephen replied, clearly uneasy. Richard turned directly to Jason. "Young man, could you repeat what you were explaining about your system?" Jason, surprised by the company president's intervention, quickly composed himself. "Of course, Mr. Blackwell. I developed a logistics optimization software that uses machine learning to predict demand patterns and adjust routes automatically. The result was a 30% reduction in operational costs at Harbour Logistics." Richard was impressed not just by the content, but by the clarity and confidence of the explanation. "And how did you end up working with Harbour Logistics?" "I sent a proposal directly to the operations director after identifying a bottleneck in their processes through public research. They gave me a chance to prove my solution worked." Stephen cleared his throat nervously. "Mr. Blackwell, we were just discussing the candidate's suitability for the role." "Suitability?" Richard interrupted, his tone growing more serious. "What kind of accommodation?" Amanda tried to intervene. "Well, sir, considering the physical demands of the position, external meetings, presentations." "I understand," Richard said, his voice icy. "Jason, would you have a few minutes to speak with me privately?" "Of course, Mr. Blackwell. My office is on the top floor. Can you make it there?" "No problem, sir." Richard turned to the 3 executives. "You may leave. I'll take over the rest of the interview." After they left, Richard accompanied Jason to the elevator. "I apologize for my team's behavior, Jason. That doesn't reflect our company's values." "No need to apologize, Mr. Blackwell. Unfortunately, it's not the first time I've experienced this." In the elevator, Richard observed the young man's maturity in handling the situation. "Tell me more about your experience at Harbour Logistics." "I worked there for 6 months as a consultant. The project was so successful they wanted to hire me permanently, but I chose to finish my degree first." "And why did you choose our company to send your resume?" Jason hesitated for a moment. "To be honest, Mr. Blackwell, I saw an interview where you spoke about innovation and giving opportunities to unconventional talent. I thought it would be different here." The words hit Richard like a punch to the gut. He remembered Michael saying the exact same thing years ago. They arrived at the presidential office, a spacious room with a panoramic view of the city. "Sit wherever you feel most comfortable, Jason." "Thank you, Mr. Blackwell. This view is incredible. I've worked here for 15 years, and it still amazes me every day. Coffee?" "I'd love some, thank you." Richard poured 2 cups and sat across from Jason. "Tell me about your family, Jason. How do they support your career?" "My mother, Mrs. Margaret, is a retired teacher. My father passed away when I was 16, shortly after the accident that left me like this. She always encouraged me not to accept limitations others tried to impose on me. Richard felt a lump in his throat. The story echoed so clearly, his own son's. And how was returning to your studies after the accident? Hard, I won't lie. I had to relearn many things, but I discovered I had a knack for programming. It was like finding a language that finally made sense to me. Jason, may I ask a personal question? How do you handle prejudice? Jason thought for a moment. I've learned there are two kinds of people, Mr. Blackwell. Those who only see limitations and those who see possibilities. I prefer to focus on the second and prove the first wrong. Richard smiled for the first time since the interview began. That's an admirable philosophy. Tell me, Jason, if I offered you a position here, but not the one you originally applied for, would you be interested? It would depend on the position, Mr. Blackwell. I won't accept a job out of pity or to fill a quota. I want to be truly useful. What if it were a leadership role in technological innovation? You'd be responsible for identifying and developing disruptive solutions for our clients. Jason fell silent for a few seconds, processing the offer. May I ask why you're considering this? We've just met. Richard stood and walked to the window. Because, Jason, 3 years ago, I lost my son. He was a brilliant young man, an engineering graduate who became paraplegic in an accident. For 2 years, he faced exactly what you went through downstairs today. The difference is, he gave up fighting. Jason felt the weight of Richard's words. I'm so sorry for your loss, Mr. Blackwell. Michael would be your age now, and seeing you down there, maintaining your dignity despite the humiliation, I remembered why I built this company. It wasn't to perpetuate prejudices, but to create opportunities. Richard returned to his chair. Jason, I'd like to offer you the position of Director of Technological Innovation. You'd report directly to me and have a team of 5 developers under your supervision. Mr. Blackwell, that's very generous, but I need to be sure it's based on my merit, not your personal loss. Jason, let me be clear. Over the past 6 months, I hired 3 consulting firms to solve exactly the kind of problem you resolved at Harbor Logistics. All of them failed. You're 23 years old and have already achieved what professionals with decades of experience couldn't. Jason processed the information. Could I meet the team before giving a final answer? Of course, but first, I need to handle a situation downstairs. Richard called his assistant. Mark, get Peterson, Amanda, and Mark Williams to my office now. Dear listener, if you're enjoying the story, please take a moment to like and subscribe to the channel. It really helps us who are just starting out. Now continuing, 15 minutes later, the 3 executives entered the room visibly nervous. They were surprised to see Jason still there. Sit down, Richard said coldly. I want to understand exactly what happened in today's interview. Peterson tried to take the lead. Mr. Blackwell, we followed all protocols. We evaluated the technical qualifications and... Peterson, did you tell Jason that clients would feel uncomfortable with him? Well, it's a legitimate market consideration. Amanda, did you spill water on his laptop on purpose? Amanda paled. It was an accident, Mr. Blackwell. And you, Mark, suggested he wouldn't be able to get on stage. Sir, they were practical considerations about the demands of the position. Richard opened a drawer and pulled out some papers. Interesting, because here I have Harbor Logistics' report on Jason's work. They saved $2 million in the first half of the year with his system implementation. The 3 executives fell silent. I also discovered that over the past 2 years, you systematically rejected all candidates with disabilities who applied for technical positions. 12 qualified professionals were dismissed without proper evaluation. Peterson tried to defend himself. Mr. Blackwell, it's not discrimination. They're objective suitability issues. Suitability? Richard interrupted. Jason, could you show them how you got up here? Jason moved to the office bookshelf and, using only his arm strength, transferred to a regular chair before smoothly returning to his wheelchair. Over the past 5 years, I've given presentations in 12 different countries. I've never encountered a stage or auditorium I couldn't access with proper planning. Richard stood up. Peterson, Amanda, Mark, you're fired, effective immediately. Mr. Blackwell, Peterson protested, this is an overreaction. We didn't do anything other companies don't do. That's exactly the problem, Peterson. My company won't be like the others. Richard turned to Jason. Jason, would you like to start on Monday? Mr. Blackwell, I haven't given my final answer yet. You're right. What do you need to know to decide? Jason looked at the three executives who had just been fired. I need to be sure I can make a real difference here, not just symbolically. What kind of difference would you like to make? I want to implement a recruitment program that evaluates talent based solely on merit. And I want to develop technological solutions that make the job market more inclusive. Richard smiled. That sounds exactly like the kind of disruptive innovation we're looking for. Peterson, still in the room, couldn't contain himself. This is ridiculous. You're going to ruin the company's reputation with this politically correct nonsense. Richard Blackwell turned slowly to face him. Peterson, my company made $50 million last year. Do you know how much Harbor Logistics saved thanks to Jason Mitchell's work? $2 million in 6 months. If that's politically correct nonsense, I'll take more of it. After the three men left, Richard turned his attention to Jason. So, what's your decision? I accept, Mr. Blackwell, but on one condition. What is it? I want to hire a new HR team that understands diversity isn't charity. It's a business strategy. Done. You'll have full autonomy over that. Jason extended his hand to seal the agreement. When can I start? How about tomorrow? We have a lot of work ahead. As they headed downstairs to formalize the hiring, Richard paused for a moment. Jason, can I ask you something? What did your father do? He was a mechanic, Mr. Blackwell. He always said no matter how broken a machine is, there's always a way to fix it. It just takes patience and creativity. He'd be very proud of you today. I hope so, Mr. Blackwell. I hope so. The next day, Jason arrived early for his first day as Director of Innovation. News of his hiring and the dismissals had spread quickly through the company, stirring a mix of curiosity and apprehension among the employees. Richard greeted him personally and introduced him to the entire team. Everyone, I'd like to introduce Jason Mitchell, our new Director of Technological Innovation. He'll be leading our most ambitious projects and revolutionizing our approach to solution development. The employees greeted him politely, but Jason noticed skepticism in their eyes. Thank you, Mr. Blackwell. I look forward to meeting each of you and understanding how I can contribute to ongoing projects. After the introduction, Jason headed to his new office, spacious, modern, and fully accessible. Richard had made sure every detail was just right. His first challenge came during the initial project meeting. The development team, led by Sarah Johnson, a 35-year-old senior programmer, presented software they'd been working on for 8 months with no satisfactory results. The issue is, we can't integrate the modules efficiently, Sarah explained. The system slows down when processing large data volumes. Jason reviewed the code for a few hours and pinpointed the problem. The architecture is fundamentally flawed. You're processing everything sequentially when you should be using parallel processing. We tried that, but it created data conflicts, replied John, one of the junior developers. Because you didn't implement the semaphores correctly. Let me show you. Jason spent the rest of the afternoon restructuring the code with the team. The result? A 400% improvement in system performance. Sarah was impressed. How did you spot that so quickly? Experience with optimization. At Harbor Logistics, I faced a similar issue with much larger data volumes. From that moment, the team's initial skepticism began to fade. Jason demonstrated not just exceptional technical skill, but also the ability to explain complex concepts simply. A week later, he launched his first initiative as director, the Diverse Talents Program. We want to identify exceptional professionals who might have been overlooked by traditional recruitment methods, he explained to Richard. How do you plan to do that? Online technical challenges, blind competency assessments, and partnerships with universities and inclusion-focused organizations. How much budget do you need? $50,000 to start. If it works, we'll expand. Approved. The program was launched a month later and immediately attracted national attention. Hundreds of professionals applied, including many people with disabilities who had never had a real opportunity to showcase their skills. The first candidate selected was Emily Wilson, a deaf developer with a master's degree in artificial intelligence. "She's brilliant," Jason explained to Richard. "She developed a pattern recognition algorithm that's years ahead of the competition. Why couldn't she get a job before? Because companies assumed deafness would be a problem for teamwork. Emily showed me she uses visual communication tools far more efficient than traditional meetings." Emily was hired, and within 3 months she developed a system that increased the company's project efficiency by 25%. The second hire was Christopher Brown, a data analyst with autism who had been rejected by dozens of companies. "Christopher sees patterns others can't identify," Jason explained. "His unique way of processing information is exactly what we need for real innovation." Within 6 months, the Diverse Talents program had hired 15 professionals. Jason's team became the most productive in the company, developing solutions other departments couldn't even imagine. The transformation didn't go unnoticed by industry media. Blackwell Technologies began winning innovation and inclusion awards, attracting attention from international clients. During an interview with a tech magazine, the reporter asked Richard about the shift in company culture. "Mr. Blackwell, some critics say you're prioritizing social agendas over business results. How do you respond to that?" "With numbers," Richard replied. "Our revenue has increased 35% since we implemented the Diverse Talents program. Our innovation team, led by Jason, has developed solutions that put us 3 years ahead of the competition. What exactly changed? We stopped hiring people like us and started hiring people better than us." Dear listener, if you're enjoying the story, take a moment to like and especially subscribe to the channel. It helps us a lot as we're just starting out. Now continuing, but not everything was smooth sailing. The company's transformation faced resistance in some departments. A group of more traditional executives, led by Robert Smith, the sales director, began openly questioning the new policies. "Richard, we need to talk," Robert said during a board meeting. "Our clients are asking questions about our new image." "What kind of questions?" "Whether we're still a serious company or if we've turned into some kind of social project." Jason, who was attending the meeting, spoke up. "Mr. Smith, could you be more specific? We have concrete data on the positive impact of these changes." "Jason, with all due respect, you're new here. You don't understand the nuances of business relationships," Richard intervened. "Robert, what concrete results do you have to challenge Jason's policies?" "Well, we don't have concrete problems yet, but..." "So you're questioning policies that increased our productivity by 35%, based on speculation?" Robert grew irritated. "Richard, it's not about numbers, it's about image. Our competitors are using our new phase to question our credibility with clients." Jason asked to speak. "Mr. Smith, which competitors specifically?" "Solvtech, mainly. They're saying we prioritize appearances over competence." Jason smiled wryly. "Interesting. Solvtech is the same company that lost 3 major contracts to us in the last 2 months." Robert had no answer. "Mr. Smith," Jason continued, "may I suggest we speak directly with these clients who supposedly question our credibility?" "That's not necessary. On the contrary, it's essential. If our new approach is causing business concerns, we need to know exactly how and how to fix them." Richard approved the proposal. "Good idea, Jason. Robert, schedule meetings with our top 5 clients. Let's hear from them directly." The meetings were revealing, but not in the way Robert had expected. The first client, a director at National Oil Regional, got straight to the point. "Richard, I have to say we've been impressed with the quality of the solutions you've delivered lately. That monitoring system Jason developed exceeded all our expectations." The second client, from American Mining Corp, had similar praise. "Our technical team wants to understand how you managed such a significant leap in quality in such a short time." The third, from American Aircraft, was even more specific. "That deaf developer on Jason's team created an algorithm that revolutionized our quality control system. We want to expand our partnership." Robert was embarrassed, but didn't give up. "Richard, these are technical clients. Our financial sector clients are more conservative." "Then let's talk to them too," Jason suggested. The meeting with the Federal Reserve was scheduled for the following week. Robert was sure he'd find support for his criticisms there. The bank's tech director received them formally. "Gentlemen, I called this meeting because we have an important proposal for you." Robert perked up, expecting criticism of the new policies. "We want Blackwell Technologies to develop our new digital security system. It's the largest tech project in the bank's history." Richard was surprised. "That's an honor, but may I ask why you chose our company?" "Two main reasons. First, the technical quality of the solutions you've delivered is exceptional. Second, we appreciate your inclusion policy. We believe diversity of perspectives is crucial for developing truly secure systems." Robert left the meeting in complete silence. On the way back, Richard turned to him. "Robert, do you still think our new approach is an image problem?" "Richard, I have to admit I was wrong." "Robert, we all have biases. The difference is recognizing and overcoming them. Jason has shown us that diversity isn't charity, it's smart business strategy." That night, Jason was working late when he got an unexpected visitor. It was Mrs. Margaret, his mother. "Mom, what are you doing here so late?" "I brought dinner for my workaholic son," she said, holding a lunchbox, "and I wanted to see this place you talk about so much." Jason showed her around the office, explaining the projects in development. "Son, your father would be so proud to see you like this." "Sometimes I still feel like I have to prove I deserve to be here, Mom." "Jason, you've already proven it. Now it's time to help others do the same." Their conversation was interrupted by Richard, who was still in the building. "Sorry to interrupt, I'm Richard Blackwell, Mrs. Margaret, Jason's mother. Pleasure to meet you, Mr. Blackwell." "The pleasure is mine, Mrs. Margaret. Your son is transforming our company. He's always been determined. Ever since he was little, when people said he couldn't do something, he made sure to prove them wrong." Richard smiled. "That's exactly the determination we needed here." Mrs. Margaret looked around the office. "Mr. Blackwell, may I say something?" "Of course. Thank you for seeing my son for who he is, not for what he can't do." "Mrs. Margaret, your son taught me that limitations exist only in our minds. He helped me honor the memory of my own son." Jason looked on, curious. "Mr. Blackwell, you never told me details about your son." Richard took a deep breath. "Michael was an aerospace engineer. He had a motorcycle accident at 25 that left him paraplegic. For 2 years he tried to return to the job market, but faced exactly what you faced here on your first day." "What happened to him?" "Michael gave up fighting. He fell into deep depression and left us 3 years ago." Mrs. Margaret approached Richard. "I'm so sorry for your loss, Mr. Blackwell." "Thank you, Mrs. Margaret. When I saw Jason that first day, holding on to his dignity despite the humiliation, I knew I had to do things differently. I couldn't let another talented young man give up because of other people's prejudice." Jason felt the weight of responsibility. "Mr. Blackwell, I want you to know that every person we've managed to hire through the Diverse Talents program is a victory in Michael's memory." "Jason, Michael would be proud seeing what you've built here. You're giving opportunities he never had." 6 months later, Blackwell Technologies had become a national benchmark for innovation and inclusion. The Diverse Talents program had identified and hired over 50 exceptional professionals who had previously been overlooked by the job market. Jason developed partnerships with universities across the country, creating a talent identification network that revolutionized recruitment. "Our retention rate is 95%, Jason reported in a board meeting. "That's because people know they're valued for what they contribute, not just tolerated." The company received an invitation to present its model at the largest tech conference in Latin America. "Jason, you'll represent the company at Tech Summit," Richard announced. "It'd be an honor, Mr. Blackwell." "Are you sure? There'll be over 2,000 attendees, the main stage." Jason smiled. "Mr. Blackwell, a year ago, I was being mocked in a job interview. Today, I'll show 2,000 professionals that diversity is the key to real innovation." The presentation at Tech Summit was a milestone. Jason took the stage with the help of a lift platform and began his talk with a provocative question. "How many of you have rejected a talented candidate because you thought they didn't fit the company's profile?" Several hands rose hesitantly. I was that rejected candidate. Today, I lead the most productive innovation team in the country. The difference wasn't my competence, it was always there. The difference was finding someone who could see beyond appearances. For 40 minutes, Jason presented concrete data on how diversity drives superior results, real-world case studies of solutions developed by his team, and a roadmap for implementing effective inclusion in companies. The audience rose in a prolonged standing ovation. In the following days, over 100 companies reached out to Blackwell Technologies wanting to implement similar programs. "Jason, you've become a national phenomenon," Richard joked, showing him the newspaper headlines. "Mr. Blackwell, this is just the beginning. I want to create a national platform for technological inclusion." How so? A system that connects talented professionals with companies willing to value real skills, no bias-based filters, just objective technical evaluations. How much would you need for that? $2 million for development and nationwide implementation. Richard didn't hesitate. Approved. When do we start? Actually, I already have. Emily and Christopher have been developing the algorithm for 3 weeks. The National Platform for Technological Inclusion project progressed rapidly. Within 6 months, it was connecting professionals and companies across 15 states in the United States. The results were extraordinary. Hundreds of professionals with disabilities, individuals from underserved communities, older workers facing age discrimination, and ethnic minorities found real opportunities for career growth. "Jason, you've started a movement," said Richard, reviewing the reports. "Over 1,000 people have secured jobs through the platform. Mr. Blackwell, every person who gets a fair chance honors Michael's memory and proves my mother was right. Limitations exist only in our minds." The transformation of Blackwell Technologies drew international attention. Companies from the United States, Europe, and Asia began seeking consultancy to implement similar models. "Jason, we've been invited to present our model in Silicon Valley," Richard announced. "That's incredible, Mr. Blackwell, but I have a different proposal." "What? What if we brought them here? Show them real innovation can come from anywhere, especially the United States." The idea led to the first international conference on inclusive innovation held in New York City with participants from 40 countries. Jason delivered the opening speech, sharing his journey from the humiliating interview to becoming a global leader in technological inclusion. 2 years ago, I was in this same city being rejected by a company that couldn't see my potential. Today, that company is a global model for how diversity drives exceptional results. The change didn't happen because I became different. It happened because I found leaders willing to question their own biases. Among the conference attendees was Stephen Peterson, the former HR director who had humiliated Jason during the interview. During a coffee break, he hesitantly approached. "Jason, do you remember me?" Jason recognized him immediately. "Of course, Mr. Peterson, how are you?" "Well, I wanted to apologize for what happened in that interview. I was completely wrong." "Thank you for acknowledging that, Mr. Peterson." "Jason, may I ask you something? How did you manage to forgive what we did?" Jason paused for a moment. "Mr. Peterson, holding on to resentment would only limit me further. I chose to turn that experience into fuel for positive change. Your actions that day taught me how I didn't want to treat others. You're very mature for your age. Adversity has that power, Mr. Peterson. It can make us bitter or make us better. I chose the latter." Peterson walked away, visibly moved. A year later, Blackwell Technologies went public. The company that had nearly rejected Jason due to bias was now valued at over $500 million, recognized worldwide as a pioneer in inclusive innovation. At the IPO ceremony, Jason was invited to ring the bell, marking the start of trading. "This moment represents more than financial success," he said into the microphone. "It proves that when we give real opportunities to all talents, society as a whole benefits." Richard, standing beside him, added, "Michael, my son, this victory is yours too. Your legacy lives on in every life we've transformed." At the end of the event, a reporter asked Jason about his future plans. "I intend to expand the national platform for inclusion across all of Latin America. I don't want any talented young person to go through what I did 2 years ago. And personally, any special projects? Jason smiled. I'm dating Emily, the deaf developer on our team. She's taught me that true communication goes far beyond words. Marriage on the horizon. Who knows? But first, we want to finish the universal accessibility project we're working on together. 2 years later, Jason and Emily married in a ceremony that brought together the entire Blackwell Technologies team. Richard was the best man, and Mrs. Margaret cried with emotion seeing her son build the family he had always dreamed of. "Son, your father would be so proud," she whispered during the ceremony. "Mom, I'm sure he's watching everything from above," together with Michael. Their honeymoon was in Aspen, chosen for being a fully accessible city. During the trip, Jason received an unexpected call. "Jason, this is the White House. The president would like to speak with you about a proposal." A week later, Jason was in Washington, D.C. presenting the National Platform for Inclusion project to become federal public policy. "Dr. Mitchell," said the president, "we want to implement your model across all public agencies in the country. Would you lead this project?" "Mr. President, it would be an honor to contribute to more inclusive public policies." "Excellent. You would be appointed as National Secretary of Technological Inclusion." Jason hesitated. "May I have a few days to think? I need to discuss it with my team and my family." "Of course, but I hope for a positive answer." Back in New York City, Jason discussed the proposal with Emily and Richard. "It's a once-in-a-lifetime opportunity for national impact," Emily said in sign language, translated simultaneously by an app she had developed herself. "I agree," said Richard, "but you'd remain linked to Blackwell Technologies as a strategic consultant. What worries me is leaving the team we built here." "Jason," Emily replied, "you won't be leaving the team, you'll be multiplying it across the country." Jason accepted the appointment and became the youngest secretary in the history of the federal government. His first initiative was creating the National Diverse Talents Program, expanding to the public sector the model that had revolutionized Blackwell Technologies. In 6 months, over 5,000 people with disabilities secured positions in federal public service through assessments based solely on technical skills. "Jason, you're transforming the country," Richard said during one of his visits to Washington, D.C. "Mr. Blackwell, this is only possible because you had the courage to give me an opportunity when everyone else only saw limitations. Jason, you achieved all this through your own merit. I just removed the obstacles that shouldn't have existed." During a press conference, a journalist asked about critics who claimed he was forcing inclusion. "We're not forcing inclusion," Jason replied. "We're removing artificial barriers that kept real talent from thriving. The only thing we're forcing is true meritocracy." How do you respond to those who say people with disabilities receive preferential treatment? With data. Over the past 3 years, professionals hired through our programs have shown productivity rates 20% higher than the national average. That's because they know the value of a real opportunity. 5 years after that humiliating interview, Jason was invited to give the commencement speech for MIT's engineering class, where he had graduated. "Dear graduates," he began his speech, "you're entering the workforce at a unique moment in history. For the first time, the United States is discovering that diversity isn't an obstacle to excellence, it's the path to achieving it. Some of you will face prejudice, whether because of your background, appearance, orientation, or any difference that makes you unique. When that happens, remember, the problem isn't you. It's the limited mindset of those who can't see potential beyond stereotypes. 5 years ago, I sat where you are today, full of dreams but uncertain about my future. Today, I'm the National Secretary of Technological Inclusion, married to the woman I love, driving policies that are transforming lives across the country. The difference between where I was and where I am today wasn't a change in my physical limitations. It was finding people willing to see my true potential. Now it's my mission to make sure you find those opportunities too." The audience rose in a standing ovation that lasted 5 minutes. Among those present was a young man in a wheelchair in the front row. After the ceremony, he approached Jason. "Dr. Mitchell, my name is Luke. I'm graduating in computer science and wanted to thank you. Because of you, I never doubted I could claim my place." "Luke, The credit is all yours. I just helped open some doors that should have already been open. Doctor, can I ask you a personal question? Of course. Have you ever doubted yourself? Jason smiled. Every day, Luke. The difference is, I learned to turn doubt into determination. Every time someone says I can't do something, I use it as fuel to prove I can do it better. Thank you, Dr. Mitchell. You gave me hope when I needed it most. Luke, the hope was always in you. I just helped you see it. That night, Jason returned home and found Emily preparing dinner in the adapted kitchen they had built together. How was the graduation? She asked in sign language. Moving. A young man named Luke reminded me why we do all this. Speaking of the future, Emily said with a special smile, we have something to celebrate. What happened? Emily showed him a medical exam. We're having a baby, Jason. Jason was speechless for a few seconds, then hugged her tightly. Really, we're going to be parents? We are. And this child will grow up in a world where differences are celebrated, not discriminated against. Emily, our child will know a United States where opportunities are based on talent, not appearances. Exactly, thanks to the work you started at that company that almost rejected you. 9 months later, Emma Mitchell Wilson was born, a healthy girl who entered a world significantly more inclusive than the one her parents had grown up in. At the hospital, Jason held his daughter while talking to Richard, who had become the child's adoptive grandfather. Richard, Emma will grow up knowing differences are normal and that every person has unique contributions to offer. Jason, Michael would have been so moved to see his legacy helped create a better world for Emma. I'm sure he's watching, Richard, and he's proud of how we turned pain into purpose. 2 years later, Jason was invited to speak at the United Nations General Assembly about inclusion and technology. Ladies and gentlemen, he began, 7 years ago I was just a young American who wanted a job opportunity. Today I represent my country, speaking about how inclusion can transform entire societies. The United States has proven that when we remove artificial barriers and judge people solely on their abilities, we discover extraordinary talents that were being wasted by prejudice. Our National Diverse Talents Program has connected over 50,000 professionals to real job opportunities. This isn't charity, it's economic intelligence. The message I bring to you is simple. Diversity isn't an obstacle to progress. It's the fuel for real innovation. The speech was broadcast live across the United States. In New York City, Mrs. Margaret watched from her living room, holding Emma in her lap. "Grandma, Daddy's on TV," Emma said, pointing at the screen. "Yes, my dear, your daddy is showing the whole world that dreams come true when we have the courage to fight for them." At Blackwell Technologies, the entire team paused to watch. The company now had over 300 employees, 40% of whom were people with disabilities or from traditionally marginalized groups. Emily, now the company's director of innovation, remarked to her colleagues, 7 years ago, Jason was humiliated in an interview at this very company. Today, he represents the United States at the UN. This shows what happens when we give real opportunities to true talent. After his speech at the UN, Jason received invitations from over 30 countries to help implement similar programs. The American model of technological inclusion had become a global benchmark. Back in the United States, Jason decided to write a book about his journey. Beyond Limitations, How I Transformed Prejudice into Progress became a national bestseller, inspiring thousands of young people facing discrimination. During the book launch, a journalist asked him about the most significant change he had seen in the country. The most important change isn't in the numbers, though they are impressive, it's in the mindset. Today, when an American company interviews a candidate with a disability, they think about potential, not limitations. And personally, what's changed in you? I learned that our greatest disability isn't physical. It's the inability to see beyond appearances. When we overcome that, we discover a world of endless possibilities. 10 years after that humiliating interview, Jason was invited back to Blackwell Technologies for a special ceremony. The company had created the Michael Blackwell Award for Inclusive Innovation, awarded annually to projects combining technical excellence with positive social impact. Richard, now with completely white hair, gave the opening speech. 10 years ago, we nearly lost the greatest talent our company ever had because of prejudice and ignorance. Thankfully, there was still time to correct that mistake and learn a fundamental lesson. Genius has no standard form. Jason took the stage to present the first award. The winner was Luke, the young man who had approached him at graduation years earlier. Luke developed an app that automatically translates sign language into speech and vice versa, revolutionizing inclusive communication, Jason announced. In his acceptance speech, Luke said, "This award represents more than personal recognition. It represents an America that has learned to value differences as a source of innovation. Thank you, Dr. Jason, for showing the way." After the ceremony, Jason and Emily walked through the company halls with Emma, now 3 years old. "Daddy, why does that lady talk with her hands?" Emma asked, watching a deaf employee signing. "Because there are many ways to communicate, sweetheart. She uses her hands just like you use your voice." "Can I learn too?" "Of course you can. In fact, Mommy can teach you." Emily smiled and began teaching Emma some basic signs, which she picked up with the natural enthusiasm of a child. "See, Emma," Jason said, "differences aren't problems to solve. They're opportunities to learn." That evening at home, Jason reflected on the extraordinary journey he had lived. From a young man rejected because of prejudice to a national leader in inclusion, from a humiliated candidate to a global reference in diversity. He picked up a photo from the table. It showed him Emily and Emma at the beach during their last vacation. Next to it was another photo, him and Michael Blackwell, Richard's son, whom he had come to know through pictures and stories. "Michael," Jason whispered, "I hope you're proud. We turned your pain into purpose, your legacy into hope for thousands." Emily came closer. "What are you thinking about?" "The journey so far. Sometimes it feels surreal that it all started with an interview where they laughed at me." "Jason, you turned laughter into respect, prejudice into progress. That's what true leaders do." "Emily, sometimes I wonder what would have happened if Richard hadn't stepped in that day. You would have found another way. Talents like yours always find a way to shine." "Maybe. But I'm grateful I didn't have to find out." The next day, Jason received a special call. It was from the newly inaugurated President of the United States. "Dr. Mitchell, I'd like to invite you to serve as Secretary of Innovation and Social Inclusion. We want to create a department dedicated solely to expanding what you've started." "Mr. President, it's an honor, but I have to ask, why create a specific department?" "Because what you've proven in the United States needs to be a model for the world. We want our country to be the global reference for how diversity drives prosperity." Jason accepted the challenge. At 33, he became the youngest secretary in American history, responsible for policies that would influence future generations. In his inauguration speech, he said, "I accept this role not just as a personal recognition, but as a collective responsibility. Every policy we implement, every program we create, every life we transform, will be a victory against prejudice and proof that the United States is a land of opportunity for all." 13 years ago, I was a young man dreaming of contributing to the nation's progress. Today, I have the responsibility to ensure that other young people, regardless of their differences, have the same opportunity. The ceremony was broadcast live. In a classroom in Boston, a teacher told her students, "Look, children, Secretary Jason started by facing prejudice, but never gave up on his dreams. He proved that limitations exist only in our minds." A wheelchair-bound student in the front row smiled and said, "Teacher, when I grow up, I want to be like Secretary Jason." You can be better than him, Michael. You can be yourself with all your unique talents. 2 years as secretary were enough for Jason to implement policies that completely transformed the landscape of inclusion in the United States. The country became a global benchmark, hosting delegations from dozens of nations eager to replicate the American model. During an international conference in Washington, D.C., a representative from Germany remarked, "Secretary Mitchell, how did the United States manage to eliminate barriers in such a short time that other countries take decades to overcome?" The answer is simple. We stopped seeing differences as problems and started seeing them as solutions. Every person who was traditionally excluded brought unique perspectives that enriched our projects. A delegate from Japan asked, "What was the biggest obstacle you faced?" Cultural resistance. Changing laws is easy. Changing mindsets takes persistence and concrete results that prove the new approach works better. And how did you overcome it? With data. Companies that adopted inclusive policies saw growth 35% above the national average. Numbers convince better than speeches. After 5 years as secretary, Jason decided to return to the private sector. He and Emily founded the Unlimited Potential Institute, an organization that developed assistive technologies and training programs for people with disabilities. The institute quickly became a continental leader, developing solutions exported across Latin America. During a visit to the institute, Emma, now 8 years old, asked, "Daddy, why did you leave the government to start over?" "Because, my dear, when we plant seeds and they grow, our mission isn't to care for just one tree, but to plant an entire forest." "And the other trees?" "They're all the young people who will come after us, who will have opportunities our generation had to fight for." Emma thought for a moment. "Daddy, when I grow up, will the world be different?" "It will be better, Emma. Every generation has the responsibility to leave the world a little better than they found it." "What if I want to help too?" "You're already helping, my dear, just by growing up knowing that differences are normal and that every person has unique worth." 15 years after that humiliating interview, Jason Mitchell was invited to deliver the keynote speech at the graduation of the first class of the Inclusive Technology Degree Program, specifically designed to train professionals in accessibility and inclusion. "Dear graduates," he began his speech, "you represent a fundamental shift in American society. You are not graduating to work in a world that still needs to learn about inclusion. You are graduating into a world that already understands diversity is synonymous with innovation. When I started my career, people like me constantly had to prove we deserved an opportunity. You are graduating in the United States, where opportunities are based on competence, not appearances. This doesn't mean our mission is complete. It means we now have the tools and knowledge to accelerate changes that once took decades. Leave here knowing you carry the responsibility to keep building a society where no talent is wasted because of prejudice." Among the graduates was Michael, the boy who years earlier had said in school that he wanted to be like Jason. Now, at 22, he had become an expert in artificial intelligence applied to accessibility. After the ceremony, Michael approached Jason. "Secretary Mitchell, do you remember me?" Jason looked closely. Something about the young man's smile was familiar. "I'm sorry, Michael, but I can't recall where we've met. We never actually met in person. But when I was 8, I watched your swearing in as secretary at school. That day, I told my teacher I wanted to be like you." Jason smiled, moved. "And now? Now I know I can be better. I developed an automatic translation system that lets blind people see through real-time audio descriptions. It's already being used in 50 countries. Michael, that's extraordinary. How can I help expand your project?" "Actually, sir, I came to invite you. I'd like you to mentor me in an even bigger project." "What project?" "I want to create the world's first 100% accessible city, a place where anyone, regardless of limitations, can live with complete independence." Jason was struck by the young man's ambition and vision. "Michael, that's exactly the kind of transformative idea we need to support. Count me in." 2 years later, Inclusive City St. Peter was being built in upstate New York. The project drew global attention as a model of universal urban design. Jason, now 40, led the advisory committee alongside Michael and a team of experts from various fields. "This isn't just an architectural project," Jason explained to a delegation of European urban planners. "It's a social experiment in how future cities should be designed." "What's the main differentiator?" asked a Dutch architect. "We planned the city first for those with the greatest accessibility needs. We found that when a city works perfectly for people with disabilities, it works perfectly for everyone." Michael added, "Every street, every building, every public space was designed so anyone can navigate with total independence. But most importantly, we did this without sacrificing beauty or urban functionality. The first phase of the city opened 3 years later, housing 5,000 residents. The results surpassed all expectations. Residents' productivity is 25% above the national average, Michael reported at a conference. This happens because when we remove architectural and social barriers, we unlock human potential. Jason added, St. Peter proves that inclusion isn't an extra cost. It's an investment in efficiency and quality of life. During the inauguration ceremony for the second phase, Jason received a special honor, a plaque with his name on one of the city's main avenues. This honor isn't just for me, he said, emotional. It's for all the young people who were rejected, humiliated, or ignored, but never gave up fighting for a better world. Emma, now 13, stood by her father's side during the ceremony. Daddy, are you proud to have an avenue named after you? I'm proud of what this avenue represents, Emma. Everyone who walks down it will know that limitations can be overcome with determination and support. And when I grow up, oh, will I be able to make a difference too? Emma, you already do. Growing up knowing diversity is normal is the greatest contribution your generation can make. You won't have to fight the prejudices our generation faced. That night, Jason and Emily walked down the avenue bearing his name in the city they helped create. Jason, do you remember the question I asked 15 years ago? Emily asked. Which question? If you thought our son would grow up in a better world. I remember. And what's your answer today? Emma is growing up in a world we couldn't have dreamed of when we were young. And Michael is building cities that will make that world even better for her children. Jason stopped and looked around. The streets were perfectly lit, with audio signals for the blind, tactile flooring artistically integrated into urban design and architecture that seemed to bloom naturally from an inclusive mindset. Emily, remember when they laughed at me in that interview? How could I forget? It was the day that changed our lives. Sometimes I wonder what those people would think if they saw all this today. They learned that laughing at someone for their differences is laughing at possibilities they can't see. 20 years after that interview that could have destroyed his dreams, Jason was invited to receive the Nobel Peace Prize for his contributions to building a more inclusive society. In his acceptance speech in Oslo, he said, "This prize isn't mine. It belongs to everyone who faced discrimination but never lost hope. It belongs to the leaders who had the courage to challenge institutionalized prejudice. It belongs to the families who supported children society called different." 2 decades ago, I was just a young American who wanted to work. Today, I represent a global shift in how we understand human potential. The lesson I learned is simple. Our greatest disability as a species isn't physical, sensory, or cognitive. It's our inability to see beyond appearances. When we overcome that, we discover diversity isn't an obstacle to progress. It's the fuel for innovation that solves humanity's most complex problems. The speech was broadcast to over 1 billion people worldwide. In the United States, schools paused activities to watch, using the moment as an educational opportunity about inclusion and citizenship. After the ceremony, Jason was approached by a young Norwegian journalist. "Mr. Mitchell, what's your message for young people facing discrimination today? Don't accept limitations others try to impose on you. Turn obstacles into fuel for innovation. And never forget, the problem isn't you. It's the limited mindset of those who can't see real potential." And for business and government leaders, stop seeing diversity as a concession and start seeing it as a competitive advantage. The countries and companies that understand this first will lead the future. Back in the United States, Jason found the country completely transformed. The employment inclusion rate for people with disabilities had jumped from 2% to 35%. The United States had become the preferred destination for international professionals seeking truly inclusive environments. In a meeting with his team at the Unlimited Potential Institute, Jason announced his next project. "I want to create an international university of inclusion and innovation, a place where students from all over the world come to learn how to build truly equitable societies." Michael, now his main partner, immediately supported the idea. "Jason, This university could be the hub of a global network of inclusive cities. Exactly. Imagine the impact of training 1,000 leaders a year, each returning to their country with practical knowledge about effective inclusion. The project for the International University of Inclusion and Innovation, IUII, was approved with unanimous support from Congress. Within 3 years, the campus was ready, located in inclusive city St. Peter. The IUII attracted students from 80 countries, becoming the most competitive institution in the world in its field. Its unique feature was its methodology. All courses were taught by mixed teams, including professors with and without disabilities, ensuring diverse perspectives on every subject. Our graduates don't just learn theory about inclusion, Jason explained during an international interview. They experience inclusion throughout their education, understanding in practice how differences enrich learning and innovation processes. Emma, now 20 years old, was accepted into the first inclusive leadership course at the university her father had created. "Daddy, is it weird studying at the university you founded?" "Emma, this university isn't mine. It belongs to everyone who believes we can build a better world. You're here on your own merit. But won't people think I have an advantage because I'm your daughter?" "Some might. But your peers and professors will know you earned your spot the same way everyone else did, by demonstrating the potential to make a positive difference in the world." By the end of the first academic year, Emma had developed a project that even impressed Jason, an app connecting elderly individuals with young professionals, creating intergenerational mentorship partnerships. "Emma, how did you come up with this idea?" "I remembered Grandma Margaret telling stories about the challenges she faced as a teacher. I realized we're wasting an entire generation's wisdom just because they weren't born in the digital age." Emma's app was implemented in 10 countries in its first year, connecting over 100,000 intergenerational mentorship pairs. Richard, now 80 but still active, remarked during a visit to the university, "Jason, you haven't just transformed your own life. You've created a legacy that will impact future generations." "Richard, none of this would have been possible without your courage to challenge prejudices in that interview 25 years ago." "My role was small, Jason. You turned an opportunity into a social revolution." "Richard, you taught me that true leadership is giving opportunities to talents others fail to see." Now Emma is learning the same lesson. And Michael? Michael lives on in every life we've transformed, in every barrier we've broken, in every young person who finds opportunity where there was once only rejection. 25 years after that interview that nearly destroyed his dreams, Jason was elected permanent chancellor of the IUTI, solidifying his role as a global leader in inclusive education. In his inauguration speech, he publicly shared the full story of his journey for the first time. 25 years ago, I was in a meeting room being humiliated by executives who could only see my limitations. Today, I lead a university that trains leaders capable of seeing potential where others see only differences. This transformation didn't happen because I changed. It happened because I found people willing to question their own prejudices and create opportunities based on real merit. Now our mission is to raise a generation of leaders who will never have to learn this lesson the hard way, because they'll grow up knowing that diversity is synonymous with innovation. The speech was followed by a special performance, a choir of deaf and hearing students singing together a song composed especially for the occasion, with simultaneous sign language interpretation. The song, titled "Beyond Limitations," became a global anthem for the inclusion movement. During the reception after the ceremony, Jason received an unexpected visit. It was Stephen Peterson, the former HR director, who had led his humiliation 25 years earlier. "Jason, I hope you remember me." "Of course, Mr. Peterson. How are you?" "Well, I came here to do something I should have done a long time ago." Peterson knelt publicly before Jason. "I ask for forgiveness for what I did 25 years ago. Not just to you, but to all the talents I wasted because of prejudice and ignorance." Jason helped him up. "Mr. Peterson, thank you for acknowledging that. But please don't kneel. We all make mistakes. What matters is learning from them." "Jason, may I ask how you managed to forgive what we did?" "Mr. Peterson, holding on to resentment would only limit me further. I chose to turn that painful experience into fuel for positive change. In a way, that humiliation was the first step toward everything I built afterward. You're extraordinary, Jason. No, Mr. Peterson. I'm just someone who learned that our greatest strengths can come from our greatest struggles. Peterson walked away, visibly moved, embraced by other former colleagues from Blackwell Technologies who had witnessed the scene. That night, Jason and Emily walked through the university campus. Students from dozens of different nationalities chatted in groups, using different languages and forms of communication in a harmony that seemed almost utopian. Jason, can you believe we've come this far? Sometimes it feels surreal, Emily. From a humiliating interview to a university training world leaders in inclusion. And now, what are your next dreams? Jason stopped and looked up at the starry sky. I want to see Emma and her generation leading a world where our journey is just ancient history, where no talented young person is ever rejected because of prejudice. Do you think we'll get there? I'm certain, Emily. Every student who graduates here carries that mindset back to their country. In 20 years, the world will be unrecognizably more inclusive. And personally, do you still have individual dreams? Jason smiled. I want to be a grandfather, to see our grandchildren growing up in a world we couldn't even imagine when we were young. And if they ask about our story, I'll tell them we lived in a time when people were judged by appearances, not character, and that our generation had the privilege of changing that. 3 years later, Emma graduated as the top student in her class, specializing in intergenerational inclusion technologies. Her graduation project was implemented by the UN as an official program for active aging. During the ceremony, Jason gave a special speech to his daughter's graduating class. Dear graduates, you represent the first generation to grow up in a truly inclusive world. That gives you a special responsibility to ensure this mindset becomes irreversible. You won't have to fight the prejudices earlier generations faced, but you'll have to invent solutions for challenges we don't even know yet. Leave here knowing you hold in your hands the tools to create a future where differences are celebrated as a source of human richness. Emma, as the class speaker, responded, Professor Jason, our generation grew up watching you turn pain into purpose. We learned that true leadership is using privilege to create opportunities for others. We promise to continue the work you started 30 years ago in a meeting room where they laughed at your limitations. Today, those limitations have become the driving force for changes that have benefited millions of people. On behalf of the class of 2055, thank you for teaching us that the future isn't something that happens to us, but something we create together. The ceremony ended with all the graduates standing and applauding for 5 uninterrupted minutes, not just for Jason, but for all the pioneers who made a truly inclusive world possible. End of story. So what did you think of this transformative journey? Jason proved that limitations exist only in our minds, and that with determination, any obstacle can become fuel for extraordinary change. Share in the comments. Do you believe actions like Richard's can truly transform lives? Leave a like if this story touched your heart, and most importantly, subscribe to the channel for more inspiring stories that show the power of human perseverance.